Hey martial arts fans, welcome to Budocast. I'm Aiden Core and I'm joined by Nova Arden. We are the podcast that brings you the latest news from the world of martial arts. From the dojo to the ring and beyond. From competition results to new training techniques, we've got you covered. We want to hear from you. If you have news to share, a story to tell, or a question, visit https://budocast.com to send us an email. Let's get into the news.
Yeah, and it is just a phenomenal week to be breaking down the fight game. We have a massive stack of sources to dig through today, spanning everything from shocking returns to the cage to the very grassroots systems that are, building the next generation of gold medalists.
Right, completely. And for you listening right now, consider this your own personal, custom-tailored deep dive. Our mission today is to explore this really fascinating intersection that runs through literally all of our source material this week.
The crossroads of legacy and the future?
Exactly. The profound crossroads of legacy and the future. We are going to look at how aging legends navigate their final chapters, how ghosts of the past are returning to the spotlight, and simultaneously, what brand new systems are being built right now to forge the champions of tomorrow.
And as we get into this, I want you to really put yourself in their shoes for a moment. Just imagine the immense, suffocating pressure of stepping back into the cage after a decade away. Think about the psychological toll of facing the opponent who handed you your worst nightmare and doing it in front of your home crowd for the very last time. That human element, that internal battle, is what makes combat sports unlike anything else on Earth.
And on the flip side, we have the raw, tactical realities.
Yeah.
I mean, imagine the pure ring generalship required for a 26-year-old rising star to walk into enemy territory at high altitude and upset a hometown hero. We've got a ton of ground to cover. We are breaking down a truly surreal superfight announcement that has the entire MMA world buzzing. We are looking at massive, divisional landscape-shifting title news in the UFC. Huge shifts.
We have high-stakes, dramatic kickboxing rematches set for Tokyo, and we are going to explore the institutional evolution of Olympic-style boxing across the globe, from Bulgaria to a literal digital revolution happening in Nigeria. So let's jump right into this first story because it feels like a glitch in the Matrix.
A glitch in the Matrix is probably the only way to describe it. I mean, most valuable promotions just officially announced that Ronda Rousey, who is now 39 years old, and Gina Carano, who turns 44 this April, will officially headline a May 16th event.
And it isn't just a standard pay-per-view broadcast either. This is streaming live on Netflix from the Intuit Dome in Inglewood, California. This is a featherweight super fight that feels entirely surreal. We're talking about the two foundational pillars of women's mixed martial arts finally colliding, but they're doing it in 2026. Right. And to understand why this is dominating the news cycle right now, you really have to look at what both of these women represent to the historical fabric of the sport. Gina Carano wasn't just a fighter. She was the world's most famous female combat athlete of her era.
Without a doubt.
If you rewind the tape back to August 2009, she and Chris Cyborg made history as the very first women to headline a major MMA event under the Strikeforce banner. That fight aired live on Showtime. The atmosphere that night in San Jose was electric. Carano was the one who kicked the door down for mainstream acceptance. She proved that audiences would tune in by the millions to watch high-level female competitors.
She absolutely laid the foundation. I mean, without Carano taking those early, incredibly difficult steps in the spotlight, Dana White might never have changed his mind about women in the UFC. Rousey took that baton and broke the final barrier, becoming the first woman to compete in the promotion when she headlined UFC 157 in 2013.
Yeah, she went on that iconic 3-year run.
Where she was, bar none, the biggest star in the entire sport. But the real story here, the thing we really need to dig into for this deep dive, is the backstory. Why didn't we see this fight a decade ago when they were both in their athletic primes?
And that is where the business of the fight game gets incredibly messy. And it brings up a really crucial point about fighter autonomy and promoter trust. So by 2013, Carano had transitioned away from the cage and was a highly successful Hollywood actress. But in 2014, the UFC came calling.
Right.
Carano opened up about this a few years ago, detailing this high-stakes dinner meeting she had with Dana White and Lorenzo Fertitta. They slid a staggering $1 million offer across the table for her to fight Rousey.
Which, in 2014, for a women's MMA bout, was just an earth-shattering amount of money.
It was life-changing leverage. And Carano was genuinely interested. They left that dinner with handshakes and positive feelings. But Carano made one very specific, very human request. She asked for 6 months of absolute silence from the promotion. She hadn't fought in 5 years. She needed time to quietly find a gym, assemble a team of coaches she could trust, and mentally prepare for the brutal reality of a training camp before the media circus descended on her.
Which makes perfect tactical sense. You can't just walk into a random gym on a Tuesday with TMZ cameras in your face and start taking leg kicks after half a decade on a movie set. You need a sanctuary. You need to test your body privately to see if it can even hold up to the rigors of sparring.
Exactly. But what did the promotion do?
Leaked it immediately.
The very next day, Dana White was out in the media talking about her name, telling the reporters he was going to sign her. Carano didn't even have a head coach yet. This is a classic pressure tactic used by promoters to force a fighter's hand, but in this case, it was a massive psychological breach of trust. Carano texted him, reminding him that she needed a quiet runway to build a team. White kept pressing the issue publicly.
And then came the text message.
The fatal error, yes. White accidentally sent a text message directly to Carano that was clearly intended for another UFC executive. The message read, "This expletive is something like expletive us around."
Unbelievable.
Carano replied, "I think you sent this out to the wrong person." And White, instead of apologizing, doubled down and replied, "I don't think I did." That single exchange killed the super fight. If a fighter doesn't feel respected or safe in boardroom negotiations, how on earth can they trust the promotion when they are locked inside the cage?
It completely shattered the working relationship. But that brings us to the reality of 2026, because we have to talk about how two athletes in their late 30s and mid-40s actually get their bodies back into fight shape after spending 10 to 17 years away from professional competition.
It's a massive physical mountain.
It is. Let's look at the sheer gaps in cage time here. Carano hasn't taken a professional fight since that loss to Cyborg in August 2009. That is approaching 17 years of ring rust.
Wow.
And Rousey hasn't fought since December 2016 when she took that devastating 48-second knockout loss to Amanda Nunes.
The physical mountain they have to climb is daunting.
It's unprecedented at this level of the sport. We talk a lot about the gas tank and cardio, but the real issue here is the central nervous system and impact absorption. The human chin does not get better with age, and it certainly doesn't improve after a decade of not taking punches. For Carano, returning to a grueling MMA training camp means her joints, her tendons, and her ligaments have to be slowly readapted to the violent, explosive movements of striking and grappling. If she just jumps into hard sparring, she will tear a muscle before the poster's even printed.
Oh, absolutely. The body just isn't conditioned for that sudden trauma.
And for Rousey, she has to overcome the muscle memory of how her career ended. The sport evolved drastically past her judo-heavy style in 2015 and 2016. Has she been updating her striking defense? I have a really hard time seeing how this fight plays out as anything other than a slow, hesitant sparring match or a sudden, unfortunate injury. The tactical reality is that their bodies simply cannot do what their minds remember doing in 2014.
Look, I hear your skepticism on the physical side, but let's look at the narrative pull here. Yes, the technique won't be what it was at UFC 157, but this isn't about finding the #1 contender for a title. This is a heritage bout. It's about closure. It's closure for both of these athletes and for the fans who debated this fantasy matchup in forums for a decade. The fact that they are willing to step under those bright Netflix lights, knowing the physical risks, speaks to a deeply ingrained warrior spirit that never really fades.
It's a massive spectacle, I won't deny that. And speaking of the tension between protecting your body and chasing one last historical spectacle, we need to talk about Jon Jones.
Another legend contemplating his future.
Exactly. Just a few weeks ago, during an interview with Helen Yee at a celebrity football event, Jones sounded like a man who was finally ready to walk away. He was incredibly candid about dealing with an arthritic hip.
Which is a sobering admission from someone who has been universally recognized as one of the greatest talents to ever step into the octagon.
He told Yee, "I think I could be done." He acknowledged that while he feels he can still compete with the heavyweights, his internal standard is just too high to stick around as a diminished version of himself. But the part that really struck me was his fear of cognitive decline.
Yeah, that was heavy.
It's very heavy. He talked about meeting a retired fighter a few years ago who had taken so much damage over his career that he couldn't remember his own birthday. Jones said, "I'm far from that, and I don't want to know what that looks like." He wants to get out with his mind and his legacy intact.
When a fighter of Jon Jones's caliber openly discusses the fear of chronic traumatic encephalopathy or just the general loss of self that comes from a long career in the cage, it's a profound moment. It tells you he is deeply evaluating the cost of every single training camp and every single strike he absorbs. The damage in this sport is cumulative, and it's often invisible until it's far too late.
Which is why his sudden pivot is so wild. Just weeks after making those comments about retirement and his hip, Jones shows up at a fan meet and greet at a casino in New Hampshire, and he completely shifts gears. He tells the crowd that he is actively in negotiations with the UFC for the highly discussed 2026 UFC White House event. He said, "I'm a very, very, very proud American, and I cannot wait to represent one more time." Dana White had previously downplayed Jones being on this card, but Jones is clearly lobbying hard for it.
And just to be clear for you listening, we are looking at this strictly through the lens of sports history and event spectacle. We are leaving the politics of the venue entirely at the door. What we are analyzing is the unprecedented nature of the UFC holding a fight card on the grounds of the White House. From a purely historical and legacy standpoint, this is uncharted territory. It's a one-of-one venue.
Right, but let's look at the tactical and physical reality of what he is asking for. He just admitted to having an arthritic hip. If you understand the biomechanics of fighting, you know that literally everything generates from the hips.
Power, movement, everything.
Everything. If your hip joint is stiff and degenerating, you cannot drop your level quickly to sprawl against a 250-pound heavyweight wrestler. You cannot sit down on your punches to generate knockout power. You lose your lateral mobility. Stepping into the cage against elite, world-class heavyweight killers past your physical prime, with a known degenerative joint issue, just to fight at a cool venue, that is incredibly reckless. The physical danger far outweighs the cool factor of the poster.
I completely disagree that it's just about the cool factor of a poster. You are analyzing this purely like a mathematician, looking at joint torque and reaction times. You have to look at the psychology of a man who has already conquered every normal arena in the world.
Up the hip?
I know, but listen, he has fought at Madison Square Garden. He has fought in Las Vegas. He's cleared out 2 divisions. The idea of competing on a stage that has literally never existed before in the history of combat sports, a stage that will be talked about in history books 50 years from now, that offers a narrative capstone that is irresistible.
I mean, I get the narrative appeal.
For an elite athlete, the internal tug-of-war isn't just about preserving health. It's about achieving immortality. He knows his hip is bad. But the chance to be the main event of the most unique broadcast in UFC history, that is the kind of legacy play that makes fighters ignore their doctors.
I understand the draw of immortality, but the cage is a violently unforgiving place to chase it when your body is betraying you. But let's shift our focus across the globe to Tokyo, where another legend is actively writing his final chapter, and his timing is very deliberate. We're talking about One Samurai One, scheduled for Wednesday, April 29th, live from the historic Ariake Arena in Japan.
This is a brilliant strategic move by One Championship. This new monthly series, One Samurai, is specifically tailored to showcase Japan's elite martial artists on a dedicated global platform. And the main event they have booked to launch the series is the rematch the kickboxing world has been begging for.
We have Rodtang, the Ironman Jitmongyan, stepping in against Takeru natural-born crusher Sagawa for the one interim flyweight kickboxing world title in a 5-round super fight. The records here are staggering. Rodtang has 274 career wins. Takeru is 45-5.
To really grasp the gravity of this rematch, we have to revisit the sheer shock of their first meeting at 172 at the Saitama Super Arena. It was billed as the fight of the decade, the clash of the Thai superstar and the Japanese icon. But the reality of that fight stunned the entire arena into silence.
Let's break down the tape of that first fight because it was 80 seconds of pure violence. Takeru's style is deeply rooted in K1 kickboxing. He likes to bounce, use his footwork to find his range, and build his combinations off his jab. Rodtang didn't give him a single second to establish that rhythm.
He just walked right through it.
It's exactly. From the opening bell, Rodtang marched forward with that terrifying Muay Thai pressure. He walked right through Takeru's initial offense. And the finish wasn't a wild brawl. It was incredibly calculated. Takeru tried to plant his feet to fire back in the pocket, and Rodtang stepped slightly off the center line, transferring his weight perfectly, and uncorked a devastating left hook.
Right on the button.
He caught Takeru flush on the chin right as Takeru was resetting his guard. Takeru was flattened. He couldn't beat the referee's count. It was a terrifying display of an iron chin, allowing Rodtang to walk through fire to land the kill shot.
It was a brutal end to a dream matchup. But the true measure of Takeru's legacy is how he responded. He refused to let that 80-second knockout be the final image of his career. He returned to the Ariake Arena months later at 173 to face Denis the Bosnian Menace Puric, who is an incredibly tough, durable veteran.
And tactically, Takeru looked completely revitalized against Puric. He clearly learned from the Rodtang loss. He didn't get lured into a phone booth.
No, he stayed outside.
He used his elite footwork, darting in and out of range, tagging Puric with sharp 1-2 combinations and chopping at his legs. He managed the distance beautifully, letting Puric swing at air. And then when Puric fatigued in the second round, Takeru unleashed his finishing instincts for an emphatic TKO victory.
That performance proved that the 34-year-old former 3-division K1 champion still has world-class tools. But the real emotional hook of this upcoming rematch dropped during the One Samurai press conference earlier this month. Takeru stood at the podium and announced that this fight with Rodtang will be the absolute final fight of his career.
Which instantly elevates the stakes of this fight from a simple title bout to a matter of life and death for his legacy.
It changes the entire atmosphere. Think about the mindset required to make this decision. For his final walk to the ring, Takeru is actively choosing to lock himself inside a cage with the exact man who handed him the most humiliating, terrifying defeat of his professional life. He is bringing his biggest nightmare straight to his doorstep in Tokyo.
That takes an incredible amount of mental fortitude.
It does. This isn't about money or a belt. It is a pure story of redemption. For you listening, think about what it takes to confront your biggest failure one last time, knowing there are no second chances, no bounce-back fights to fix it if things go wrong. It's the ultimate quest for closure. He wants to capture one gold, avenge the darkest moment of his career, and leave his gloves in the center of the room. It gives me chills just thinking about the walkouts for this one.
Before we dive deeper, a quick shout out to our sponsor, Elite Sports. They are the leaders in premium quality fight wear for BJJ and MMA. Whether you're rolling or striking, they have got the gear to keep you moving. Check them out at elitesports.com/NJHA. You can find a direct link in the show notes.
We've talked a lot about legends navigating their final chapters, but the UFC is currently dealing with a massive influx of new blood and shifting crowns at the very top of their weight classes.
The divisional landscape at 205 pounds is in absolute chaos right now. The biggest domino fell when Alex Pereira officially vacated the undisputed light heavyweight championship to make his long-awaited move up to the heavyweight division. UFC CEO Dana White confirmed the shift, and it completely blows the doors off the light heavyweight top 10.
Pereira has been such a terrifying, dominant force at 205 pounds. His departure leaves a massive power vacuum, and every contender in the rankings suddenly realizes their path to the belt just got significantly shorter.
And the matchmakers wasted absolutely zero time filling that vacancy. They've announced that the fight for the newly vacant light heavyweight title will headline UFC 327 on April 11th at the Casilla Center in Miami. We are getting former champion Jiri Prochazka, who is 32-5-1, taking on the surging contender Carlos Ulberg, who sits at 13-1.
I love this stylistic matchup.
It's amazing. Let's break down how these two match up inside the octagon, because you could not script a more extreme clash of styles. Jiri Prochazka is the human embodiment of chaos. He doesn't follow traditional striking fundamentals. He keeps his hands by his waist, he leaves his chin high in the air, and he constantly switches stances while throwing strikes from impossible blind angles.
Which makes him so hard to prepare for.
Exactly. He had to vacate this exact title back in 2022 due to a catastrophic shoulder injury. Then he ran into Pereira and suffered 2 brutal knockout losses. But since that second loss, Jiri has rebounded by leaning entirely into his wild style, securing back-to-back violent finishes over Jamahal Hill and Khalil Rountree Jr. He dares opponents to hit him, relying on his chin and his unpredictable rhythm to drag them into deep water.
And then you look across the cage at Carlos Ulberg and you see a fighter who looks like he was built in a laboratory to counter that exact kind of chaos.
Precisely. Ulberg fights out of City Kickboxing in New Zealand, and he fights with that gym's signature calculated, sniper-like precision. Since a stumble in his UFC debut, he has rattled off a 9-fight win streak. He's coming off an incredibly cold, calculated first-round knockout of Dominic Reyes.
He looked phenomenal there.
He didn't waste an ounce of energy. He uses hard calf kicks to limit his opponent's movement. He manages distance with a stinging jab, and he waits for you to make a mistake before landing a straight right hand. It is going to be the disciplined sniper trying to pick off the hurricane in Miami.
It is a brilliant piece of matchmaking. But while we look ahead to Miami, we have to unpack the absolute madness that just went down at UFC Fight Night in Mexico City. The theme of the new guard tearing down the old guard was on full display.
Without a doubt, the upset of the year so far happened in that main event. A 26-year-old Englishman named Lone'er Kavanagh, coming in at 10-1, walked into hostile territory and completely stunned the former two-time flyweight champion, Brandon Moreno. Kavanagh took a unanimous decision victory with the scorecards reading 49-46, 48-47, and 48-47.
This is a massive, massive upset.
Let's talk about the fight IQ in the gas tank on Kavanagh here, because it was a masterclass in performance optimization. First, you have to factor in the environment.
The altitude.
Right. Arena CDMX suits at an elevation of over 7,000 feet. Fighters who don't acclimate properly gas out by the second round. Their legs literally turn to lead. Add in the fact that Kavanagh took this fight as a late replacement for Asu Almabayev, who withdrew with a hand injury in February.
Taking a short-notice 5-round fight at altitude against a former champion is normally a recipe for disaster.
It usually is. But Kavanagh's pacing was flawless. He didn't let the roaring crowd bait him into an early firefight. He established his jab early to keep Moreno at bay. The defining sequence happened in the second round. Moreno tried to blitz forward, and Kavanagh dug his heels in and unleashed a blistering flurry of punches and kicks that legitimately buckled Moreno's knees.
You could see the shift in momentum right there.
From that moment on, Kavanagh had Moreno's respect. And in the championship rounds 4 and 5, Kavanagh showed incredible maturity. He didn't recklessly chase a knockout. He circled on the outside, picked his shots, neutralized Moreno's wrestling attempts, and systematically outpointed the former champ to the final bell.
It was a star-making performance. But the human element of this outcome is genuinely heartbreaking if you look at it from Brandon Moreno's perspective. Think about the emotional weight he was carrying into the octagon. This was his grand homecoming in Mexico City. The fans adore him. They treat him like royalty.
It's his city.
And yet, this loss drops Moreno to 23-10-2, meaning he has now lost back-to-back fights in 3 of his last 5 since dropping his title in 2023. You could see the devastation on his face as the decision was read, the pressure of trying to prove to your home country that you still belong at the very top of the mountain, only to get outworked by a late replacement prospect that is a heavy, heavy burden to shoulder. It really makes you wonder where Moreno goes from here.
It does. But Kavanagh deserves major credit for how he handled the microphone afterward. He completely diffused the hostile crowd by showing immense respect. He pointed at Moreno and explicitly called him a legend. Kavanagh said, "I live for legendary moments. This is a legendary moment. Brandon is a legend, a former 2-time world champion." He recognized that he was claiming a massive piece of real estate in the division, but he did it with grace, officially claiming his space among the elite.
It was a beautiful passing of the torch moment. And honestly, that relentless energy of prospects trying to violently establish themselves carried through the entire Mexico City undercard. It wasn't just the main event. The whole night was a showcase of survival.
Let's dive deep into that undercard, starting with the co-main event, because David Martinez put on an absolute clinic against the veteran Marlon Chito Vera. Martinez took a unanimous decision, 29-28 across the board, and improved to 14-1.
Chito is always a tough out.
A notoriously difficult puzzle to solve. He is a slow starter who shells up in round 1, reads your data, and then turns into a relentless zombie in rounds 2 and 3, walking through punches to land devastating elbows and kicks.
But Martinez just wouldn't let him do that.
He completely short-circuited that game plan. He used beautiful lateral footwork, constantly pivoting off the cage so Vera could never set his feet to throw heavy strikes. When Vera tried to march forward, Martinez didn't brawl. He changed levels and mixed in effortless wrestling takedowns to break Vera's rhythm. Martinez is now on a 10-fight win streak, 3-0 in the UFC, and he looks like a massive problem for the bantamweight top 15. Vera, sadly, has now lost 4 straight.
The margins in the sport are so incredibly thin. One day you were fighting for a title, and a year later you were fighting to keep your spot on the roster. But we also saw that veteran fire hasn't completely burned out across the board. Look at King Green.
39 years old, and still putting guys away. Green, formerly Bobby Green, faced Daniel Zellhuber, a highly touted prospect who was expected to use his length to pick Green apart. Instead, Green used his classic Philly shell-inspired defense, keeping his hands low, rolling his shoulders to deflect Zellhuber's strikes, and constantly talking trash to bait the younger fighter into overcommitting.
Which is such a dangerous game to play against a sharp striker.
It is, but he executed it perfectly. With just 5 seconds left in the second round, Green caught Zellhuber rushing in and secured a brutal TKO stoppage via strikes. And the arena absolutely exploded when Green grabbed the mic and cut a passionate, intense promo calling out Nate Diaz, demanding he leave boxing and come back to the UFC for a real fight.
Green understands exactly how to play the game and keep his name in the headlines. And the Mexican fighters on the card definitely brought that gritty, crowd-pleasing style. We saw Edgar Chairez edge out Felipe Bunes in a razor-close split decision. The scorecards were 29-28, 28-29, and 29-28. It was a pure, high-volume kickboxing match inside the cage. Chairez has now won 3 of his last 4, while Bunes is really struggling, dropping 3 of his last 4.
And talk about surviving the storm. Imanol Rodriguez made his UFC debut against Kevin Borjas, and round 1 was a complete disaster for Rodriguez. Borjas swarmed him, landing heavy shots, and Rodriguez looked like a deer in headlights, nearly getting finished against the fence.
A lot of guys would have crumbled right there.
But Rodriguez showed immense grit. He survived the round, went back to his corner, listened to his coaches, and came out in round 2 like a totally different fighter. He closed the distance and landed a massive overhand right that dropped Borjas, earning the TKO victory at 4.21 of the second round. That is the kind of debut that builds serious character.
It really does.
Yeah.
And kicking off the main card, bantamweight Santiago Luna put on a striking clinic. He used a diverse mix of punching combinations to the head and body to earn a clean 30-27 unanimous decision over Angel Pacheco. Luna stays undefeated at 8-0 with his second UFC win.
If you look at the entirety of that undercard, it perfectly illustrates the unforgiving meat grinder that is the UFC roster. You have veterans like Vera fighting for survival, young guys like Luna trying to build momentum, and guys like Rodriguez fighting back from the brink of a quick exit. The mental toughness required just to make the walk to the octagon is staggering.
Which is why the development of that mental toughness has to start long before a fighter ever signs a professional contract. The transition from a talented kid in a gym to an elite world contender requires highly developed institutional support. That brings us to our final segment today, the future of training and how international organizations are evolving to build the champions of tomorrow.
Let's start by looking at the USA Boxing Elite High Performance Team, who just wrapped up a highly successful run at the 77th International Strandja Boxing Tournament in Sofia, Bulgaria. The pipeline for American boxing looks incredibly strong right now. Out of 35 total bouts contested by the United States team, they secured 22 victories, bringing home a total of 7 medals.
That is a dominant showing against top-tier international competition. It proves the grassroots systems are working.
They are, and the standout performer was absolutely Levant Brownlee, who took gold in the 70-kilogram division. His run through this tournament was a masterclass in tactical adjustments and deep water conditioning. He fought 5 times over the course of the week. He cruised through the early rounds, winning 3 bouts by unanimous decision and advancing once via walkover. But the final match against Kazakhstan's Faruk Takhtasanov was a true test of character.
How did that final play out?
Well, in amateur boxing, momentum is everything. Brownlee actually lost the opening round. The judges scored it 3-2 for the Kazakh fighter. A lot of young fighters panic in that situation, abandon their game plan, and start headhunting.
Right, they get desperate.
But Brownlee didn't. He realized Takhtasanov was using too much lateral movement, so Brownlee weaponized his gas tank. Over the final 2 rounds, he relentlessly cut off the ring. He stepped into the pocket, absorbed the jab, and forced Takhtasanov to fight at a suffocating pace. By drastically increasing his punch volume and forward pressure, Brownlee completely broke Takhtasanov's rhythm, winning both of the final 2 rounds by 4-1 scores to secure the gold. That ability to physically break an opponent in the later rounds of a tournament final shows elite, world-class preparation.
That is exactly the kind of wing generalship you want to see from a future Olympian. But the story out of Bulgaria isn't just about the gold medals, it's also about the resilience built through heartbreak. We have to shine a spotlight on Lorenzo Patricio, a native of Waianae, Hawaii, who competed in the 55-kilogram division. Patricio fought his way to the finals and engaged in an absolute 3-round war with Ukraine's Maxim Zemenko. It was back and forth, high-output boxing. But when the scorecards were read, Patricio lost a brutally close 3-2 split decision, walking away with the silver medal.
Dropping a 3-2 split decision in a tournament final is agonizing. It means one judge, seeing one punch differently, changes the color of your medal.
It is devastating in the locker room afterward, yes. But you have to look at the broader narrative. This was Patricio's very first elite international tournament. He traveled halfway across the world and proved he can stand toe-to-toe with the very best on the planet. A narrow loss like that does something powerful to an athlete's psychology. It validates their skill level while simultaneously leaving a massive chip on their shoulder. Patricio isn't going back to Hawaii satisfied. He is going back starving. That silver medal is going to be the premium fuel he burns in the gym as he prepares for his next major test, the 2026 World Boxing Cup in Foz do Iguaçu, Brazil, coming up this April. He knows the margins are razor thin, and he knows he belongs.
It's a great perspective. And we should also give a quick nod to the impressive depth of Team USA, with bronze medals going to Jocelyn Perez, Alyssa Mendoza, Simona Winkler, Naomi Graham, and Joseph Alnonga. The American amateur system is clearly humming. But the evolution of boxing infrastructure isn't just happening in the United States. We're seeing a massive structural revolution taking place right now with the Nigeria Boxing Federation.
This might be one of the most inspiring developments we discussed today. The NBF has officially launched the maiden edition of National Boxing Week, which runs from March 1st through the 6th at the Bray Ayanotba Boxing Complex inside the National Stadium in Lagos. This event is serving as the National Open Trials to select the athletes who will represent Nigeria at the highly anticipated 2026 Commonwealth Games in Glasgow.
It's a huge step forward.
What I love about this is how they are deeply weaving the history of the sport into the current ambitions of the youth. The entire week honors the life and legacy of the legendary Hogan Kid Bassi. For those who don't know, Bassi was a true pioneer, becoming Nigeria's first ever world champion back in the 1950s. He brought immense global pride to the nation. By framing the trials around his legacy, the NBF is reminding these young fighters of the greatness that is in their bloodline.
It sets a massive standard. But the most important aspect of these trials isn't just the homage to the past. It is the strict, modernized mandates set forth by NBF President Wally Aden and the National Sports Commission. They are championing a completely transparent, merit-driven selection process.
Which, if we are being honest, has historically been a major issue in amateur boxing federations worldwide. We've all heard the horror stories of backroom deals and political favoritism deciding who gets to go to the international games. Aden explicitly stated that the old tradition of selecting boxers behind closed doors is completely over. This is an open call to all affiliated clubs, state associations, and eligible Nigerian boxers worldwide. Whether they train in Lagos or in the diaspora overseas, every single athlete has to lace up their gloves and earn the right to wear the green and white through pure performance inside the ring across 10 different weight categories.
And this is where the operational side gets really fascinating to me, because the NBF isn't just throwing a tournament. They are executing a complete digital transformation of their entire organization. Over the last 3 months, they have developed and rolled out a brand new automated licensing system for all athletes and coaches.
That's a huge modernization.
Right. When we talk about performance on this deep dive, we usually talk about heart rate zones, sparring rounds, or technique. But administrative and organizational infrastructure is just as vital. If a federation relies on paper files, records get lost, rankings get manipulated, and athletes lose faith in the system. The NBF has built a digital infrastructure designed to guarantee transparency in how athletes are selected, ranked, and managed. It removes the human error and the potential for corruption from the administrative side. Walt Luden had a brilliant quote that really stuck with me. He said, "We are repositioning Nigerian boxing for global competitiveness, not just inside the ring, but administratively and technologically. Governance must be as strong as the punches our athletes throw."
Governance must be as strong as the punches our athletes throw. That is a foundational mantra. It recognizes that raw talent can only take a nation so far if the institution supporting that talent is broken. By blending the historical inspiration of a pioneer like Hogan Bassi with a modern, transparent, digital infrastructure, Nigeria is building a bulletproof pipeline. They are ensuring that the kids who bleed in the gym are actually the ones who get to represent the country under the bright lights in Glasgow.
It really ties together everything we've talked about today. The past informing the future, the evolution of the sport at every single level. We have covered a massive amount of territory, from legends in their 40s trying to turn back the clock in Los Angeles and Tokyo, to a 26-year-old shocking the world in Mexico City, all the way to the administrative revolutions shaping the Olympic and Commonwealth hopefuls of tomorrow.
And as we bring this deep dive to a close, I want to leave you, the listener, with a final provocative thought to carry with you. Through all of these diverse stories we unpacked today, there is one invisible, undefeated opponent that dictates everything: timing.
Timing is everything.
Think about the delicate, fragile balance of timing in martial arts. If Dana White hadn't leaked that meeting to the press and Gina Carano had gotten her 6 months of silence, she and Ronda Rousey might have fought in 2014 during their absolute physical primes. How would that single event have altered the entire trajectory of women's MMA? Would the ripple effects have changed who holds the championship belts today?
And look at Takeru in Tokyo. If he had decided to take his gloves off and retire in the locker room, immediately after that devastating 80-second knockout loss to Rodtang. How would the history books remember him? Would his legacy be defined by that one brutal flash knockout? Instead, his timing choosing to endure a grueling bounce-back fight against Pereira and demanding the rematch for his final act completely rewrites his historical narrative. In the fight game, timing isn't just about landing the perfect counter-left hook or pacing your cardio for the 5th round. It is about when you choose to step into the fire. It's about when you seize an unexpected, terrifying opportunity, just like Lone'er Kavanagh did at Elevation. And ultimately, it's about knowing when to finally leave the battle behind, a reality Jon Jones is actively wrestling with right now.
It makes you wonder about the timing in your own life. How is timing impacting your own championship rounds? Are you waiting too long for the perfect, quiet moment that might never actually arrive? Or are you rushing headfirst into a battle you haven't properly prepared for? It's something to mull over as you navigate your own challenges in whatever arena you compete in this week.
That's it for this episode. Thanks for joining us to talk about the latest in martial arts. We will be back soon with more news, stories, and insights. Until then, remember to train hard and stay humble. If you have any news to share, reach out to us at widowcast.com and follow us on our social media platforms.